This is Ken Hans, best storyteller in Texas. Saying of the day: the uncoachable kids of today become the unemployable adults of tomorrow. They're going to have to get used to somebody telling them something, and they have to do things they don't necessarily like. And they have to learn a little discipline and a little self-discipline. If they're not disciplined, they can't learn self-discipline. So I think too many times that everybody gets a little pampered, and you're going to have some ups and downs in life, and they need to understand that and know how to deal with it. That's very important in raising a child. Today, I wanted to mention that last week, my good friend Charlie Stenholm passed away. He got elected to Congress the same year I did, 1978. And he represented the 17th district, which was east of the 19th district that I represented. And he was a solid citizen. He's a good person. He was a gentleman. I tell people, if you looked up the word gentleman, his picture ought to be there. And he got along with everyone, and everybody liked him. And he was the last conservative Democrat to serve in Congress. And that now they've got very few, if any, moderates. And that the liberals are trying to hang on because the progressives are, rooting them out. And so it's liberals trying to hang on, but they're against defunding the police, and the progressives are for defunding the police. And but Charlie Stenholm, he played a role in Reagan's tax cuts and budget cuts. On the tax cuts, we had 78 Democrats voted for it. You couldn't do that now on either party. They just won't do it. They're too party aligned, and they're under pressure to stay within the party boundaries. And Charlie was the coordinator for the Conservative Democratic Forum, which were nicknamed the Boll Weevils, and that was during the early 80s. And the Boll Weevils were a group of conservative Democrats and moderate Democrats that supported President Reagan. And most of them, Reagan had big victories in their districts. And so they understood that, the people they worked for, they like Ronald Reagan. And press might not like him. They might say, well, he's just an actor, but it didn't matter. They'd hear him speak on TV, and he was smooth. He had a press conference and spoke to the nation before the tax cut. We were needing more votes, and he went on national television, and the phones lit up, and he mentioned me in his speech. He said, the bill is being carried by a bipartisan group, conservative Democrat Ken Hans and Republican Barbara Conable, and they're carrying it. And he was most gracious and said, call your congressman. I got over 100 calls asking me to vote for my own bill. That's how effective he was. And Charlie Wilson, who was Democrat, and Charlie Wilson, he was a party animal. And Charlie Wilson said, and I'm going to clean this up, he said, I hope he doesn't come out against sex. He said, everybody be calling, wanting to abolish sex. And Charlie was a funny guy. But Stenholm, Charlie Stenholm, was one of the best members, and he always tried to do what was right. Now, in 1994, he had a close election, and he got 54% of the vote. And the early votes came in. His kids thought he'd gotten beaten. They went out to the farm to console him, but by the time they got out there, he had won. And he had close races after that. And that district was turning Republican. And a lot of people tried to get him to change parties, including myself, and he just wouldn't do it and thought he could stem the tide, but he later admitted that he couldn't change it. And Democrats were moving to the left pretty fast. He finally got beaten redistricting in 2003. they merged the 17th and the 19th districts. So they put Lubbock in with Abilene. And just the population of Lubbock was such that, that they were 260,000. Abilene was yet not at 100,000. And Randy Naugabar, who proved to be a good member of Congress, Randy he won and beat him by 18 points. I think Stenholm got like 42 points. And that district, no one's gotten that many votes. No Democrat since then has gotten above 30, 25, 30 at the most. But Charlie was, he retired, was in Granbury, living in Granbury, taught a couple of classes at Tarleton. He had a bachelor's from Texas Tech in 61, then a master's in 62. And he was involved in ag education, and he taught vocational ag for a while before he got into real farming. And vocational ag, I've mentioned that before, they have the chapter procedures team. And I was on the chapter's procedure team. And you do Robert's Rules of Order. But there were certain things they'd call the roll, and the chapter advisor would say, "Here by the owl to give good and wise advice." The sentinel, here by the door to keep people out that should not be in here. It's always pretty funny. I liked it. I thought it's funny. And now if I see a kid that has one of those FFA corduroy jackets on, I'll ask him, "Who's by the owl? Who's by the bust of Washington?" And they'll always look at me like, "How does he know that?" I told a kid one time, "You got to learn that before you can get into Congress. If you don't know that, they won't let you in." He went, "Really?" So I don't know if he ran for Congress or not in later years. But Stenholm was a farmer, was a good farmer, and was a cotton farmer down at Stanford, right north of Abilene. And he had never held office before. And so it was to run for Congress and never held office before and win is a lot, and so he did extremely well and was just a good guy to be with. He and his wife got up and they were at the house, and she went in to shower and he was reading the newspaper. That tells you he's of our generation. He still thought the newspaper was important in watching the news. Charlie Stenholm's kind of like he grew up in Stanford, Texas, about the same size as Dimmitt. And when I die, if I go to heaven, I think I would, that I hope it's half as good as growing up in Dimmitt, Texas, and growing up in Stanford, Texas. Those little towns. One reason that some of the greatest congressional leaders come from small towns, like Bonham, Texas, Sam Rayburn. The reason is if you live in a little town and you get crossways with somebody, you got to work it out with them because you're going to see them all the time. If you live in a city, you can avoid them, but you develop better political skills in a small town. You got to deal with them. You're going to see them everywhere you go, at church, school, whatever. There's not that many places to go. City, you can kind of avoid somebody. But small towns have produced a lot of powerful people in Washington. Saturday night, I went to the Texas Tech Centennial Party at AT&T Discovery District in Dallas. The Ed Whitaker building was right next to us. They had a grass area with a fountain and had a big stage and had people all over the place. There may have been 10,000 people there. It was huge. It was unbelievable. The line was 3 blocks long to get in, and they had security, and going through security, slows you down quite a bit. And the entertainment was Pat Green, a Texas Tech guy, who said the best 10 years of my life when I was a student at Texas Tech. And nobody asked him, "Did you graduate, though, in those 10 years?" Pat Green is a Grammy winner and just a top-notch guy and good guy. And Josh Abbott, there's not a better singer around than Josh Abbott. And he's got a great voice. He's a good friend of mine. Gave me a shout-out while he was singing, and I appreciated that. But there's just a lot. I saw people that I taught, in 07, that had kids with them, and that it was good to catch up. Saw a lot of people that said they listened to the podcast, they enjoyed the podcast, and one guy said he has to take a trip like once a month, a sales trip, and so he doesn't listen until that trip, and he said makes the trip go faster. That's what I hope that's good. One guy told me that he got pulled over for speeding when he was listening to it, and he tried to talk his way out of the ticket. He was listening to Ken Hansen. Cop didn't know and didn't care. Gave him a ticket anyway. So it was quite a party. Abbott did a great job, and so did Pat Green. But they sang separately and then together a couple of times, and everybody had a great time. Centennial, Texas Tech's 100 years old. 1923, legislation passed, and it's 2023. And so we're out there, and we had a lot of people. I saw some people that, a lady that lived in New York City, she's lived there 32 years. And I said, Lynn, why don't you move out? And she said, I got accustomed to it. And so just a lot of people, different backgrounds and where they've wound up. The part of the in 1923, when they passed the legislation, they were trying to figure out where to put it. Floydada and Plainview and Sweetwater and all kinds of places. The Fort Worth Star-Telegram. When papers really mattered, Fort Worth Star-Telegram was one of the key newspapers in the state of Texas. And Amon Carter was publisher, and he was on the first board of regents. And the statue of Will Rogers riding his horse Soap Suds is a gift from Amon Carter. And Amon Carter gave that gift, and they situated that the horse's rear end is lined up in a straight angle with College Station. And a little humor there when they're putting that horse up. But Centennial's been celebrated. They had a dinner in Lubbock not long ago, but this party last night was top notch. Speaking of Texas Tech, I want to say congratulations to Wes Kitley. He's the track coach. He won the national championship in 2020, and they won the Big 12 last week. And Wes Kitley is the best track coach in America. He looks at how many points he can get. He doesn't get carried away and just look at one position. But in the high hurdles, at the Big 12 meet, Tech finished first, second, and third. And so he was looking down the road, and he's a great recruiter, gives a lot of kids that will, and through the portal, transfer now. But he recruited kids that he could see something in their future. His son, Zach, and I saw Zach play high school football at Friendship, and he's only 6'8", defensive back I've ever seen. He's tall enough. I mean, if they throw that ball out there up for grabs, Zach is going to get it. And he's the quarterback coach at Tech now. And I talked to him the other night, and he was talking about the quarterback that he had at Houston Baptist and almost beat Texas Tech. Guy could throw the ball. And then he transferred when Zach became the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach at Western Kentucky. He transferred with him and was there 3 years and is now with the New England Patriots. And Houston Baptist was recruiting the kid, and he was 5th on their list of who they wanted. And the first 4, they didn't get him. So they were down to number 5, and they got him. And he was from East Victoria High School in Victoria, Texas. And nobody had seen him, and it was the only offer he had. He immediately accepted it. It's kind of like Wes Welker, played at Texas Tech. He had one offer, and that was it. And then he went on to be an all-pro player for almost 10 years. And but Kedley said that this quarterback, and I'm trying to think of his name. Somebody will send me a text on that. But he is playing for the New England Patriots now. People can guess and they can say this kid's going to be great and this kid's going to be. Sometimes you just don't know. Some kids don't develop until after they're 18. Some peak by the time they're 16 or 17. And so that's a good example that young man has made it all the way to the pros, and he was the last quarterback that Houston Baptist had on their list, and that's the only reason he got a scholarship, and that he could throw that ball, and he could, he had quick delivery, could get rid of it quickly. June's coming up, it'll be weddings. And to a lot of guys, I tell them best advice is remember you got 2 words to remember, I do. I was in a wedding one time, the guy said, uh-huh. And the bride elbowed him. He said, I do. It was a rocky start, and but they were off and running. And I would recommend you stay out of the way if everybody's getting a little hostile and I don't go in and volunteer to tell them how to do it. The mother and the mother of the bride, they'll figure that out on their own. And if they want some input, they'll be ready to answer. But they won't want you to confirm what they've already decided. And that's the thing. Do it quickly. I read a deal where a guy said his wife said she put on a dress and she said, "Does this make me look fat?" And he said he learned right quick. You got to say no. You don't hesitate. Just say no. Does this make me look pretty? Yes. Be quick on those answers. I saw something last week that there was a study that was done back in the 70s and 80s. McDonald's had the quarter pounder, and it was selling a lot. And A&W Root Beer decided they'd come up with a third pounder. And they found out, and it didn't make a dent. And the reason it didn't, people thought a third pounder was less than a quarter pounder. And, that's like the old story. The guy said that there was, you got 2 for $1, or you get 3 for $1.98. And a lot of people said, let me have 3. They weren't paying attention. A new scam I want to mention is that somebody will send you a text or email or something that said, look who died. I think you knew them. Have something and they want to get into your computer and try to steal information. And watch your bank accounts. I've got hacked into, I've never charged anything on PayPal, but they were doing 15 cents and 30 cents. And then all of a sudden they did $4,000 or something. Anyway, we caught them. And so, be careful. There was a survey about health and exercise, and 35% of the people said that they were too tired to exercise, so they don't exercise at all. That's a terrible position to take. I exercise every day, and I say every day, I'll miss probably 10 a year. And I walk when I'm behind on phone calls, and I walk up and down the halls of my house. And I can put my earpods in, and you can get, you can catch up on a lot of calls. If I'm behind on emails, I get on a stationary bike and do emails and just pedal away. So don't feel like that you're going to waste time exercising. You can multitask and do a good job of it and work up some sweat and keep yourself in pretty good shape. You'll be surprised, and I do a lot more of this, that if you will walk 20 to 30 minutes a day, it just does a lot for your health. I always do anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and 15. And I enjoy it. Feel better doing it. So don't be one of that 35%. And of the 35%, if you split it down by sex, is 40% female and 29% male. I had open heart surgery in 96. And when I came to, I felt so bad that I thought to myself, I'm going to try to make sure this never happens again. And, that's been 27 years on June the 21st. And that was the day that did. I remember that day, if I ever get thinking that, 4 or 5 more donuts won't hit the spot, then I think of how I felt when I came out. But I'd worked out a little before then, but I was bad about, working out for an hour and a half and then not working out for a week or things like that. It's being consistent that's important. And so if you're walking every day, I will just tell you this, if people walk at a fast pace, 20 minutes a day, it's going to help their health. 20 minutes a day, just moving. And if at the office, walking up the stairs. If you're going grocery shopping, rather than ride around, try to get the closest spot. I had a friend of mine, Jimmy Frank Davis, great guy, worked for Attorney General and was a district attorney at one time. He used to ride around the parking lot, looking for a better space. I mean, he might take 15, 20 minutes. And another friend of ours would say, just park it, Jimmy Frank, just park it. And but if you're going to park, best thing to do is park way off, and that you'll get a little exercise in. But people won't ding your doors as bad because you'll be the only car out there. Everybody else is doing like Jimmy Frank, and they're riding around trying to get a better spot. The Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, they're going to change the name to the Frankmobile. I think this is nothing more than get a little publicity and try to remind people about the Wienermobile, and it's going to be called the Frankmobile. I don't think it's not a gamble that's going to hurt them. Budweiser on their transgender ad, really hurt themselves, and their sales are down. And you got to look at your base. Who do I report to? You report to the people that are buying your product, and keep your politics. I don't care if it's conservative or liberal. Keep your politics out of your business. You're out there to sell some beer, not to be social engineers. And I think they learned the hard way on that. But there's a lot of people, they have staff members, they want to be politically correct one way or the other. And I just always tell business, stay out of that. Your job's to make money for the stockholders and present a good product for the consumer. The state of Montana banned TikTok. And they don't want the Chinese getting all the information from people. And that'll wind up in the courts. And can you do that? And it'll be interesting to see what happens. But that's one thing that's coming. Texas legislature will be over next Monday, Memorial Day. And Memorial Day is, pay respect to the people that gave their lives for this country. And the families. A lot of families have had more than one person die in the military in combat. And those people, the ultimate sacrifice. And it's the reason we have the freedoms that we do today. If Adolf Hitler had won World War II, would we be the same as well? No, wouldn't be. You'd have to do what the government said. You'd have to, they'd have one party rule. Just like the communists in China and in Russia, they've got one party rule. Worst thing you can have. There's no way you can have a democracy. One party's making all the decisions. Nobody's pushing back. And there's nothing wrong with having somebody say, I think it's a good idea, and somebody else, I'm not sure. Let's discuss that. Saying of the day was that an uncoachable kid will become an unemployable adult. They're going to have to learn life's not always easy, and there's some ups and downs, and they got to learn how to handle those ups and downs. So don't make everything a soft landing. This is Ken Hance, best storyteller in Texas. Have a great day. Enjoy your week.